Is President Obama building a coalition of the unwilling? What are the specifics of contributions in the fight against ISIS? This is Special Report. Good evening, I'm Brett Baer. President Obama's efforts to build a broad coalition to help take up arms against ISIS terrorists are apparently running into massive resistance abroad and massive criticism at home. And this fuels concern that without broad support, it will be harder to keep his promise of no U.S. combat troops. Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry has tonight's top story.
French President Francois Hollande today joined the coalition against ISIS, ordering his military's planes to strike a logistics depot in northern Iraq, though it was made very clear to President Obama there are strict limits on France's support.
There are no French troops on the ground, only planes which, in liaison with Iraqi authorities and in coordination with our allies, are weakening the terrorist organization.
And the French will not help with airstrikes over Syria, forcing the president's national security advisor, Susan Rice, onto defense over whether the U.S. will now need two separate coalitions to deal with ISIS in Iraq and Syria.
I don't think we're going to have a bifurcated coalition. This will be a unified coalition. It's one operation. It'll be under a common command. And we will continue to welcome the involvement of partners who will make different contributions.
While the president continues to claim those contributions are swelling.
More than 40 countries, including Arab nations, have now offered assistance as part of this coalition.
In reality, much of that assistance is humanitarian and logistical. And though officials pin the responsibility for piecing together the coalition on retired General John Allen, military insiders say key allies are holding back commitments, waiting for the commander-in-chief to show he'll see the mission through the end.
I think this will take the president's personal leadership. Despite Secretary Kerry and General Allen and all the skills and reputation they have, the president's got to get in this game with our coalition partners if we're going to get them in this fight in any realistic way.
That game kicks into high gear next week when the president will spend 3 days in New York at the United Nations General Assembly meetings.
But is the president going to do this next week and build this coalition himself? Is he going to push it?
The president has been engaged in this effort for weeks now, and I'm confident that those efforts will continue at the UN, both in public settings and in private settings.
Despite those weeks of effort, the White House is struggling to get contributions of military support beyond France. One reason why Secretary of State John Kerry was at the UN today and again opened the door to Iran helping the coalition.
There is a role for nearly every country in the world to play, including Iran, whose foreign minister is here with us today.
Now, the Iranians also held talks today with the 6 world powers over its controversial nuclear program. Meeting only lasted an hour, which may be a sign of very little progress with this looming deadline of November 24th for Iran to curb its nuclear activities in exchange for sanctions being lifted. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. There is a way the president can have it both ways concerning his no boots on the ground commitment. That would involve private military contractors. They are boots on the ground, but not technically the U.S. military. It is a dangerous job. The family of one CIA contractor killed in the Benghazi terror attacks is suing the U.S. government for $2 million now. The heirs of Glenn Doherty say the government had inadequate security at its facilities in the Libyan city. Tonight, correspondent Doug McElway reports on the people who do a lot of the dirty work while flying under the radar.
As the debate in Washington rages over boots on the ground in the war against ISIS, one component of America's national security capability is quietly being left out of public discussion.
Private security contractors, or PSC, our security contractor. It's basically, there's all different facets of it. I mean, for us, it was protection. It was protecting case officers, CIA case officers overseas, doing low-profile protection.
From cooks to drivers, from maintenance people to bodyguards, contractors are increasingly taking over duties traditionally performed by troops. In the Foreign Service and spy agencies, contractor duties can run right up to the edge of what a combat soldier does.
There are virtually no limits on what contractors can do except offensive air or ground combat operations. So virtually anything else with legal authority, which is granted, contractors can perform whatever the mission may be.
Mark Geist, Chris Peranto, and John Teagan are contractors and subjects of the book 13 Hours, the inside account of what really happened in Benghazi. It's difficult to distinguish their qualities from those of a soldier. Indeed, most paramilitary contractors are former military.
I have Crohn's disease, so military discharged me. I didn't know what I was going to do. So it was a way for me to continue to work, earn still have a job, but also do what I like doing, which was still soldiering, rangering.
The pay is vastly better than soldiering. Contractors can earn $140,000 a year or more. As the war on terror has expanded, so has the federal government's reliance on contractors. DoD contractor spending has nearly tripled from 2000 to 2008, while the State Department's expenditures more than quadrupled. The use of contractors offers advantages, allowing agencies to bypass the military chain of command, congressional debates over funding, as well as the semantic interpretations of what boots on the ground means.
The White House will want to keep the whole contractor story out of the news. They can't pull it out of the regular force and make it happen without contractors. And frankly, there's many skilled, qualified, experienced contractors who can perform things that the military, quite frankly, can't do.
Those advantages have drawn criticism that too much reliance on contracting risks an unaccountable mercenary force that weakens the democratic tradition of citizen soldiers. But contractors like the ones who defied orders to try to rescue besieged embassy staff in Benghazi will tell you they embody the best of America's warrior spirit, toughness, honor, and patriotism. Brett?
Doug, thanks. Mark Geist, one of the contractors featured in Doug's report and also one of the co-authors of 13 Hours, has started a charity to aid the families of contractors killed or injured who, quote, serve their country silently behind enemy lines. The website is shadowwarriorsproject.org. The new terrorist video a new terrorist video now apparently features a man with an American accent. This is an ISIS video. The Daily Mail reports the video was posted online today and is similar to other ISIS materials. Just how daunting the task of protecting America from these terrorists was evident today here in Washington at a meeting of people who are supposed to do just that. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel shows us.
I'm very concerned about the travelers. Their going there is very concerning. Far more concerning to me is the inevitable coming. They will come back.
The FBI director speaking at a Washington Intelligence and Security Summit expressed concern about those with American passports joining ISIS. And he's also warning that 21st century propaganda and technology are creating a threat to the homeland that is less visible but lethal.
Cyber has made it possible for ISIL and other groups to train and inspire people to do their work without ever having met the people. Troubled souls seeking meaning in some weird way in their basement could become the soldiers of groups like that.
A terrorism expert says he's also worried about the threat posed by those living among us.
What we know is that there are many jihadists inside the United States. We see them in the chat room. We see them online. That's where my real concern is, more than the returning fighters or those crossing the borders from the south.
With so much focus on the threat from ISIS, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee sounded the alarm about the danger of so many aspects of our lives connected to the internet.
Cyber is the greatest national security threat that America is not ready to handle. I've never seen anything quite like it. And it's ramping up.
Lawmakers say that includes China stealing billions from American businesses through attacks. The top Democrat on House Intelligence says the massive Edward Snowden leak has cost the U.S. dearly.
We have lost a lot of information. We've lost terrorists that we were on because he gave out sources and methods.
On the ISIS threat, Comey says while there's a lot of focus on those traveling to Syria to join the fight, the FBI is also doing everything possible to understand what presence or connections the terror group has here in the United States. Brett?
All right, Mike, thank you. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says he needs to get his house in order, but will not resign after a string of domestic violence incidents involving his players. It was Goodell's first public statement in more than a week during what has been the NFL's most difficult and embarrassing period in its history. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is in New York, where Goodell spoke this afternoon. Good evening, Jonathan.
Evening, Brett. After 10 days of complete silence, Roger Goodell faced the press for 45 minutes. His basic message: he and the NFL failed their fans, their sponsors, and themselves.
I got it wrong on a number of levels, from the process that I led
to the decision that I reached. But now I will get it right and do whatever is necessary to accomplish that.
The commissioner was asked, having acknowledged his many mistakes, in particular with the Ray Rice assault case, whether he had considered resigning.
I have not. I'm focused on doing my job and doing the best of my ability. I understand when people are critical of your performance, but we have a lot of work to do.
Mr. Goodell has been under increasing pressure to say more about the many cases of off-the-field violence involving NFL players such as star running back Adrian Peterson. Major sponsors, including Anheuser-Busch and Pepsi, expressed concern this week about the league's handling of the incidents. And today, the Pentagon, which spends millions of dollars on advertising around football, revealed that Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel has asked for more information about the military's involvement with the NFL. Roger Goodell, meantime, said the NFL will introduce new education programs on domestic violence and sexual assault and will offer financial and operational support to two of the biggest national organizations dealing with those issues. As for the still unanswered questions about when and what the commissioner and other NFL officials knew about the shocking video showing Ray Rice punching his wife, Mr. Goodell was vague and said the ongoing investigation by former FBI Chief Robert Mueller will answer those questions. Brett?
Jonathan, thank you. Up next, Scotland decides on independence. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates across the country are covering tonight. Fox 51 in Ocala, Florida, with a murder-suicide rampage. Police say 51-year-old Don Spirit killed his adult daughter and 6 of his grandchildren before killing himself. Spirit spent time in prison a decade ago for the shooting death of his 8-year-old son. Fox 11 in Los Angeles with an emergency landing for a JetBlue flight at Long Beach Airport yesterday. Shortly after takeoff, the pilot reported engine trouble. The cabin then filled with smoke. The plane returned to the airport quickly and passengers evacuated using emergency slides. 4 people were treated by paramedics. And this is a live look at Chicago from Fox 32, our affiliate there. The big story there tonight, and really all across the country, the massive lines for the new iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. Customers had been lined up since Wednesday in some locations for that new phone. More than 4 million phones were pre-ordered in the first 24 hours after their unveiling last week. Many people will have to wait several days to get delivery. That is tonight's live look outside the Beltway. Looks like a nice night to be waiting in line. We'll be right back.